I guess I'm gonna have to eat a little bit of humble pie here. Not very much humble pie, just a very small slice of humble pie. Um, because I have been taught something by a famed engineer, system engineer, some might say, um, hardware engineer, some might say. Um, this didn't show up in my YouTube recommends until this morning. So making breakfast, I was watching a video from very famous hardware engineer, and I learned something. Good old Zeke with his 12 years of experience in doing software, and like, if you count it, like almost 20 years of programming, and even more breaking Windows installs and screwing around with config files and running software. um, so I have to give props to my teacher here, famed engineer. How does the circle work? Famed software engineer Louis Rossmann. He taught me something that I in fact actually know. It's my day job, literally all day long. Um, but in this video that I was watching while I was having pancakes, I learned something, or I was forced to remember something. So let's go ahead and just watch that. And also, the analytics say that all the new viewers dip out by 30 seconds in. So hello, all of you not new viewers.
Be addressed. When it comes to licensing agreement, there's certain software that Thor mentioned that he may not even have a license to allow you to have. The license is not necessarily the concept of lack of honesty in the way that this is sold, which is something that it does need to be addressed. When it comes to licensing agreement, there's certain software that Thor mentioned that he may not even have a license to allow.
The jump cuts hurt. Especially because I'm lazy and I ain't editing this. I'm gonna hit stop recording and upload to YouTube.
You to have the license that he gets from whoever he's getting the code from, or the rights. I told you guys I was out of it. The rights to the trademarks for.
Lewis.
This may be a license that he has as a dev, or he has, but he can't give that to you.
Now we're gonna get to the part that I learned this morning. This part I already knew, but there. I get it. Like you license parts of your game. You like. Well, first off, this morning, before I had my pancakes and my coffee, I was about to say something immaculately dumb. Well, if you've been so bad at your job that you've made running your business contingent on maintaining a license, I really think that you should bring that in-house. And then I thought about it for more than 2 seconds, and then I went, well, I mean, except for like the business license. Your business is literally contingent on maintaining and paying for the business license. So, hey, Zeke, maybe don't be dumb about that one. So, like, yeah, I get it. Like, you license things, you buy assets, and that gives you a license to use for whatever amount of time. It's just too bad that, like, we've never had video games in the past that, like, were experiences that you just that came in like boxes or something that were sold in stores that sold those large boxes, and then like you would just install it, and there you had to, if you were like licensing the logo for a company or a design of a thing or something. It's just too bad that like you couldn't possibly pay for the license for that thing to carry over to all of the copies of the thing that you sold. That's just too bad that that's never happened. It's also too bad that like you don't own your own intellectual property, or that you could license an intellectual property, because this was published by Bethesda Softworks, developed by a company called Mad Doc Software. And you may note this is not Bethesda original IP. Better than that, even, you open up the manual here, and they in fact have licenses from. Oh, the logo's not on the back. It's a really cool logo. You read the little disclaimers down here in the bottom of the back of the paper manual that you got. Weird. But this thing says that that there are bits of here that are owned by Rad Game Tools, and that they're using that. And there's also software technology license from Activision Publishing. And that Activision is a registered trademark of Activision Inc. So it's just too bad that these modern software devs would have to solve those hard problems. You know, there's no way that you could like come up with a modern game that that one's actually in the Switch. I was gonna pull out the little chip and show you, but that is not in there. It's too bad that like modern game devs don't have to deal with that. So
again, I'm just going to pull an example out of my ass here. Let's say you have a racing game. I don't know, like something like The Crew. I'm not saying that this game is done this way. I'm just trying to give you a hypothetical analogy. Let's say you have a game like this, and let's say that the physics for the car driving was not developed by Ubisoft.
Yeah.
They got that code from somewhere else.
Yeah.
That code may be code that they have a license to use for a certain period of time, but that may be code that they're not allowed to give.
I mean, like you buy a license for IntelliJ IDEA, and that one's actually they're very good about their license. You buy that, and you keep a perpetual fallback license so long as you pay for it for a year. But there are other IDEs, there are other tools that you pay for a license for, and you can only use the software while your license is active for that. So if you're doing that for your light baking, or if you're doing that for your physics engine, or if you're doing that for your video game engine, like if you're if you maybe are using Unity or Unreal. There are very definitely licensing costs that are involved with that. But those licensing costs come separate for like development and then per copy sold. So, I mean, Lewis is making a very good point. These are actually very real concerns. And if someone is licensing a technology for a server, and then they're only going to license it for 10 years.
You a license for permanently. So let's say they have a license for have that code for about 5 years. And let's also apply to something like a logo in a car. Let's say they have a Ferrari in there, and they have a specific car, but they have to license the ability to have that within their game, to use their trademarks. That license may be for 5 years. Now, if that license ends, if they stop paying after 5 years, that means that you can't have access to it either, because they only paid for a temporary license. But you have that game which you purchased, which means they need a way to disable access to you. Now, the problem that I would have in that case is that they should advertise that this game is not going to work in 5 years because of a license that we have on the code, or a license that we have on the logos, license we have on the material in that game. That's never really put out there. Now, one of the arguments to be made here is that the manufacturer of the game... The developer of the game may want to renew that license after 5 years if the game is still doing well. So if the game is not doing well, they shut off the server. But if the game is selling like hotcakes, they may decide that they want to renew that license. So they don't really want to pigeonhole themselves into a box by putting in the advertising materials, this game will not work on this date in 2028.
Yep.
Because if the game is still selling, they may want to continue having it work. And I understand that idea that the manufacturer wants to have that freedom into the future. However, so do the people who bought the fucking game. If I bought this game, I don't really care about your licensing agreements for the code. I don't care about your licensing agreements for any of this stuff, because back in the day, we didn't have to care. When you bought a game...
I as a consumer, I don't actually care about your licensing concerns. You sold me a good. You sold me a thing that like is playable. Like there's discs. There's discs. Those bits are on the disc. Like it doesn't really matter what you think you can do remotely. I just dug that thing into the plastic. I really hope I didn't just scratch my disc. I bought this thing, and it needs to work the same way from day one as it does on year 10. even if you don't exist anymore. And also, here's another great thing. This Star Trek Legacy, it's powered by GameSpy. So this isn't new. This isn't new, dear game developers who are undertaking the effort to develop a live service game. This isn't new, and this isn't just game players being mad about, the live service game that I put in $4 in a microtransaction into. We've been being locked out of our games for a while, and it's now to the point where, okay, dear the industry, you haven't shaped up on this in the way that the industry went and created the ESRB to go and rate games so that they wouldn't have to go and so that government wouldn't have to come in and rate them. No, we're going to go and come up with a body to do this all on our own. You haven't gone and done it all on your own. So now the consumers are going to go to the government and ask for consumer protection. Yes, this is a change, because in this instance, you have not been able to uphold your end of the bargain.
Game like Gran Turismo 2 on your PlayStation 1, you didn't have to worry about any of this. And there was no worry about licensing. All the cars in that game, a lot of them were real cars. Whatever licensing they worked out with any of the manufacturers of those cars, whatever license it was a license where I could continue to play Gran Turismo 2 today.
Unless of course the edits are all around, like he gets into a point and then he just goes, fuck! He's like, I gotta edit. Shoop!
In my PlayStation 1. Either A, the code they used for the physics, I don't know what they did. Either A, they bought a right to use the code and to have a lifetime ability to use that code in that particular game. Or B, they wrote the code for that themselves. Yep. Whatever it is, somehow, some way, back in the day, this was not an issue. And if the issue right now is that the licensing agreements for code or the licensing agreements for trademark, copyright, anything going into the game are such that you literally have to disable the game, even if it is capable of being run locally in single player mode, a law like this would throw a wrench into the works, yet I would argue that that's a wrench that needs to be thrown at some point in time. Because if the people licensing this code, or if the people licensing these trademarks are doing it in such a way that they're literally handcuffing the developers to the point where they couldn't even give you a server binary if you wanted it, that's a serious problem. Because this is something that I've really thought about for a while. Why not just give the users the server binary? Well, they may literally not legally be allowed. The developers may be handcuffed as a result of their arrangements with the people that they license the code or the trademarks or the copyright for whatever's in the game from. And if that's the case, if a law like this were passed, I imagine that would be kind of I hope, to be clear, I'm not going to say it would be, I hope that would be a negotiating stick for the developers and the publishers to say to the people that they're licensing the stuff from, hey man, these licensing agreements don't work anymore. I can't sell my game to hundreds of millions of people. I can't even offer this to them if you're going to do this. And at that point, I imagine that it would result in some sort of different negotiating style. Now, let's go down the whole rabbit hole of server binaries. One of the things that I would think, as somebody who's ignorant of all this, is if the game requires a server to run...
Okay. Louis Rossmann, famous software engineer here. And also, he's magic at reviving MacBooks. So he's your all-rounder. He's your full stack dev, right? All the way down at the trace level. He's not an assembly programmer. This dude isn't even flipping toggles to program memory in straight binary. No. This dude's making circuits. And also he's about to teach you about some real DevOps shit here.
Why not just give them an exe? I would think you should just give me the exe for the server binary. If it runs on Spark, if it runs on a Pentium 1, if it runs on some random shit that you made, whatever it is, you would technically be...
Exactly. This is what I said in my last video, right? But wait for it. Principal engineer
compliance with the law, as long as you provided a server binary that allows somebody to spin up a server in their house. All you would have to modify in the game, in this this hypothetical case, I imagine, would be have a little fill-in box where you would change the address of the server.
Is this... Okay. There was a Theo video recently. I think it was recently since the dinosaurs died. everything's relative. Where he was talking to a high school math teacher or something about the CrowdStrike thing, and he was impressed at how the high school math teacher could just work out the fact that, like, well, shouldn't you roll out updates slowly to, like, a small set of computers and then a larger set of computers and then a larger set of computers and then worldwide before you just, like, break all of the Windows machines that have CrowdStrike installed? Isn't that like a thing? So here is the layman about to tell you about to once again deduce a thing that like, yeah, I know,
that was hard coded into the game with the
or that like, okay, so the very most minimal way that you can possibly do this is, like, give them a line in the config file for just, like, server address, server host, or whatever. And yeah, it's gonna pull some shenanigans for, like, cloudflare.blizzard.net or whatever when it's prod WoW, because it's going to be behind all kinds of load balancers, behind all kinds of DDoS protection, behind all kinds of stuff. And also because you cannot ship a game binary that includes a default config of, like, I09A38B046 us-west-2 Amazon AWS.com. I butchered that domain, but that's you're getting the exact point. Like, I'm not pointing at I'm not going to ship WoW with a config file that points to the DNS name for the EC2 instance that's running this. No, it's going to be complicated, and because you have real network engineers doing the hard job of actually wiring the whole internet together and owning an IP block and determining what goes on a public IP and what goes on a private IP and when your BGP fucks up, and real networking. But also, like, there's that line. And if someone wants to go and change that config line to go, mydomain.com, like, hey, that would get the game pointed at a private server. You were already there was already a variable somewhere. Just read it in from the config at boot time.
The address of your server. What this does not take into account, which is very important, is that most modern infrastructure it's going to connect to buckets somewhere else. It's going to connect to.
This is the lesson that I learned that made my pancakes taste a little bit sour.
It's going to connect to containers and storage and databases that are somewhere else.
Yeah,
so even if you were to give somebody the executable of the server, it wouldn't necessarily work because the game developer or the game publisher is still paying AWS. They're still paying for this bucket. They're still paying for this storage. They're still paying for this Snowflake database or whatever the hell else they're using. I have to be clear. I'm not a game developer, but you get the point.
All right, principal engineer Rossmann. Yeah, you're very right. In the modern distributed world, there isn't just server.exe. You're going to have crap that's going to get loaded from a CDN, and you're going to have crap that's stored in an S3 bucket. You're going to have crap that's stored in a lot of S3 buckets, and you're going to have lots of config lines for the quest handler, the auth handler, all of that. All of that's going to come from different places. And yeah, it's not even just going to be a raft of Docker containers, because he's very right. Did he say RDS or did he just say database? Because there's going to be a lot of stuff that's in the database, and not just like the table setup, but like, I work with real code bases. Yeah, at the beginning of this code base, it could in fact just stand itself up if you just gave it a password to the database. But at some point, the code that goes and does the create table got moved somewhere else. And while that other thing is doing the create table, it's also going to seed it with initial data, because the only time you're actually seeding a fresh database with data is when you're spinning up a new staging environment, which you should be doing, by the way. You should, your IAC and your path to production should in fact be canarying things in a staging environment before taking it to 0.1%. But also, like, yeah, I think that specifically the database stuff is remedied by as part of your final patch where you release server.exe, or the whole raft of Docker containers that make up server.exe. Also doing an export of doing a it's not the drop tables. What's the PG dump? There we go. Because everybody uses Postgres, obviously. Hello, duh. You do a PG dump from your staging setup that just has no data in it. It's just got the raw tables in it, but now it's not just turning off your service, especially if you're something like Destiny 2 or WoW. Turning off Final Fantasy 14 is not just, all right, here's the server binary. Yeah, in production, we run a gabillion of these things load balanced across the edge everywhere. No, it's not that. You have all kinds of services running all kinds of stuff. And even a straight database export isn't going to. But also, from a history preservation standpoint, from the standpoint of when society collapses and after it's rebuilt and they want to go back and see what the 21st century was like, how did they write software in the 21st century? If we had set up so that, okay, here is the export to get the thing running, not to actually start the thing, but the bare minimum to, like, all right, these are all the executables, and this is the structure of the database that we'll need to get it, that needs to be there. All of your accidentally hard coded keys, because don't kid yourself. Sometimes you're going to refer to a thing as ID 9, and like if it's not ID 9, that database is wrong. Take it out back and shoot it. Oh, ID 9 isn't where we store the global gold, the global economy gold number? No, you're actually wrong though. Take that database out back and shoot it. We're not supposed to use magic numbers, but like I know that sometimes a deadline happens and you're just like, fine, it's 9. All right, that's the value in the database. It's not the value in the other database in the non-prod. Then tear down non-prod. We're gonna call it. 9 is now the global gold. So this is the humble pie. Louis Rossmann, principal engineer, has reminded me of literally the thing that I do every day. And when I was like, no, game devs, it's literally easy. When you're shutting down the thing, you just put server.exe in your Steam bundle. Except it's not. Like, if your Steam bundle is 300 megs right now because it's all live service, your Steam bundle could easily become 300 gigs, 500 gigs. Like, yeah, you're right. But also, I don't think that invalidates the point. As Lewis said, this wrench should get thrown at some point, because consumers owning the things that they bought is worth it.
Here, even if you give somebody the server binary, the way that they developed the game, they did not develop that server in a way.
Oh, and also, like, there's lambdas. If you're dumb and you're running shit in Lambda, like, you know how hard it is to, like, keep control of your source code in Lambda. Like, they have their own source control versioning UI in Lambda. But if you wanted to keep your Python code base or your JavaScript code base in a Git repo that like you controlled in GitHub, and you wanted to do code reviews on it, and you'd need to invent a lot of machinery in order to get the latest version of that thing to get pushed into Lambda so that your ephemeral workloads can spin up and spin down whenever they need it, whenever it's being asked for, so that you're not paying for a server. And doing an export of that is, yeah. If you've done the hard work that's literally going to be a thing that we're probably going to at work. That's going to be a thing that we're going to take on for a team. Maybe not next quarter, because that would be too soon. But like, yeah, we're trying to multi-cloud, and we have a whole bunch of Lambdas right now that don't really have CI. And also, we need to go multi-cloud. Oops, it's all AWS. So, like, ugh. Oops, I hit X, but I have no idea what that keyboard shortcut
where
is.
They could just hand it off to you. They didn't develop this using that 1990s concept of everything being local, or even the concept from 10 years ago of how cloud worked, where you're just using stuff on another computer. You may have a server that is connecting to 10 or 15 different computers in order to allow that game to work, and those 10 or 15 different computers that this one server is connecting to are all servers that have subscriptions for it. You're paying for AWS, subscription. You're paying for storage in this particular place, storage that is scalable over time in the way that S3 buckets at Amazon are scalable. They're paying for that. So to give somebody an EXE would be difficult. This would require that they rethink the entire concept of how the server is put together, which would be a serious problem if we are talking about games that came out 5 or 10 years ago. This would not be as easy as just giving somebody an EXE, depending on how the game.
Once again, my stance is that that's no excuse. We shouldn't accept that, oh, it's just lost. We should exhaust all of our options. Because preserving the past is worth it, and even if we fix it from not now into the future, but 10 years into the future. Okay, devs, you have 10 years to figure out how to beta test your process until you can actually like make a game over 3 years and come up to the point where, okay, I have a way where when this game shuts down, I can give it back to the players. Give them a decade, give it 2 decades, because that's reasonable. Is like, okay, we're passing this law now in 2027. In 2047, developers, is when this goes into effect. Don't screw this up. And the actual way to do this is the slow rollout, the slowly ramping noose. Sorry, it's the metaphor. Is the slowly tightening noose of just like, okay, in 3 years you need to be able to do X. In 5 years you need to be able to do Y. In 10 years you need to be able to do Z. In 20 years, anytime you kill a game, it must be preserved for all of your consumers that had bought in. Is that harder? Yes. I don't think that will kill live services. We're going to get to that.
Was developed. If going forward they knew that they had this requirement, then the game may be developed differently. And he makes a good point here, which is you would have to rethink how you develop the game in order to be in compliance with this, and that could cause extra work. That would mean thinking about how to create this for local infrastructure, as well as creating it for if you're connecting to 5, 10 or different servers somewhere else. This would require one of two things. Behind door number one, you would provide the code open source and say, here you go, like, have fun. Set up your own S3 bucket, set up your own AWS, set up your own Microsoft Azure, set up your own Snowflake shit. Like, we gave you the source code.
Literally, all right, here's a dump from our corporate internals of everything. Of course, Lewis,
code,
there we go. I can't keep on looking at those intense eyes. Yeah, that's what I want. Here's all of the corporate source code. You don't get the Confluence or any shit like that. Here's all the source code, and that's it. That's all you get. Goodbye. Do not talk to us. They're going to talk to you anyway. They're still going to file tickets in your customer support, but you can just like, that's for that game. It's dead now. Goodbye. We do not support that.
Fun. Or let's say you don't want to open source your game. You have no desire to open source your game. You want to keep it closed source. I understand that. You would have to design the server in a way where there's a local mode, maybe some sort of thing in Docker like what Image does or what FreeGate does or what MailCow does. You would have
I'm telling you, Lewis is actually a principal engineer in DevOps. He may not be an SDE, but boy, can he sure SRE.
Have to create some sort of local system like that, and then have your system, which is designed to be scalable. And this would mean designing with that in mind. Now, if this was a law that applied retroactively, I would say that this is completely unfair because that's a lot of freaking work to do for the past 10 years of shit. Being a law that may go into effect in 2026, 2027, 2028, I'm okay with it. Does it make things harder? Yes. If that's what's necessary to bring back ownership, I do think that that's worth it. It's not as much an issue with understanding. It's an ideological difference as to whether or not this should get pushed through. And I understand the game developer's perspective, which is I want to develop my game the way I want to develop my game. But I also understand the consumer's perspective, which is you use the word purchase here. You did not use the word service game that expires at this particular time. The instruction manual does not say if I don't pay $5 a month after this date, it won't work. The manual nor the box say that this game is going to turn off in 7 years. I want to keep playing my game. I understand that. So then it becomes an issue of which one of these is more important. And in my opinion, the one that leans a little bit more towards ownership is the one that matters. Providing support to people when they're running their own server. Even if you open source the server, even if you did that, you know, if you've been in a customer service-based business, that you are going to get a bunch of people bothering you. I have people that will email me asking questions on how to fix their own shit after I've made 1,000 YouTube videos.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm sorry, but also this already happens. You already get emails to your support for nonsense insanity that you're not. So I need to move to 2005 in the thing because, like I said, unlike the ESRB, the video game industry has not managed to become good players in this space. They have instead been doing this.
Functionality of a live service game that are sold as a live service game. These are two very, very different things, and I think that's important. So one of the things that I went over in a video that I did a while ago was how Sony was selling things with their terms of service. They had said, here's all the stuff that's going to be removed from your library even though you purchased it. They did change their mind after a lot of consumer backlash, but there were a lot of items where they said that what you had bought and paid for was gone. Use of the terms own, ownership, purchase, sale, sold, rent, or buy in this agreement, or in connection with PSN content does not imply or mean transfer of ownership of any content data. Okay, so again, the intellectual property is not transferred. That makes sense. All content provided is licensed on a non-exclusive and revocable basis to you for personal, private, non-transferable, non-commercial, limited use. Here, they are actually trying to take the word purchase and just pretend that it means something it doesn't. If you have a live service game where you say this is a service that you are subscribing to, that is different from calling it a purchase. And my problem primarily with all of this has been when somebody calls something a purchase when it is not. You cannot use a contract to redefine the word purchase. If you call something...
So, like I said in the previous video, and I'm not going to require you to watch a 94-minute video to be all caught up on the full Elcar's OS expanded universe. The consensus among the consumer has not shifted. Consumers don't expect that they're acquiring a license that is non-revocable, non-transferable, or anything like that. They're still under the expectation that even though the bits are digital and it comes to them over the internet, that it's like a physical thing. They should be able to gift it to a friend when they're done, right? They still believe that the right of the right of first resale still exists, even though it's digital, they don't know how to do it because it's hard to find, but it probably can. You could probably do it. Go ask your mother. Go ask your aunt. Go ask your uncle. Hey, couldn't you just like sell me that thing in your computer? Oh yeah, you pitch it like, oh yeah, you have a book, right? You could sell me the book, or you could just give me the book, and then I would have the book. There's no copyright violation going on there. I would just have the book now. Oh yeah. Well, let me figure out if I could do that. You can't. You cannot. But there's a difference in getting an actual license and going and buying something. And this is the cute 1-2 legal maneuver that's happened with software is if you're a business and you try to form an agreement with another business, suddenly there are lawyers in the room, and those lawyers draw up an agreement, and that agreement document goes back and forth, and they redline it, and it changes until both parties are equally satisfied that this will benefit them. They're not unhappy, because if they were unhappy, they would just not form an agreement. I can't do that with your video game, right? When Sony rug pulled all of the Helldivers that had just managed to make it through the PSN linking requirement because there wasn't actually a PSN linking requirement, nobody bought the argument that, like, well, it's been in the terms of service the whole time. It's been in the terms of service the whole time. They went, well, yeah, but it was an unenforced term. At best, that's what they did. And at worst, they went, okay, then refund me. Okay, never mind, refund me. But it was the neat bait and switch that had happened of like, it's been like 3 months. It's been like 3 months since this game launched. And no, that check from Valve has already cleared into our bank account. And you have way more than 2 hours played. So no, you don't get a refund, even though we haven't actually changed the terms of the license. We are just now 3 months later enforcing this one term in the license. Well, except if this was actually a license that I could actually have made changes to, I would have redlined that out. But where we're at with software is, well, that's not an option. You can agree to this license as stated, or you can just not. And the consumer that knows that they're buying a license and not a physical copy of the thing is upset about that. They're willing to work with any system, but the system of, well, you either get exactly what we tell you or nothing isn't playing. It actually never played. It's only just becoming it's becoming now a big enough deal that consumers are pushing back against it. The first time that someone went and played a recording in public and then profited from that recording was the instant that people were like, whoa. Ownership of that recording does not give you a license to public performance. Whoa. This is okay. Ownership of that does not grant you a license to perform. It's the same thing if you go and you buy the script for a play. Ownership of that script of the play does not mean that you can go and perform that play in your community theater. It doesn't even mean that you can perform it in your basement and sell tickets for it. Nope. You get to read the script to that play for yourself. Fast forward to like 2010 to 2020 2024, and there's these neat things like Twitch and YouTube, and people are recording their gameplay and uploading it to Twitch, and everyone got up in an uproar about like, whoa, 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 whoa. You should read the terms on the back of the thing. Your purchase of this copy of the thing does not give you a license to publicly perform that. But they recognized slowly, because I remember when the Japanese publishers did not understand this, slowly they began to understand this is a marketing arm. This remixing, this public performance of our copyrighted work that we still need to sell copies of, this is worth it to us. And so now the waters have been muddied. What used to be very solid terms of like, no, when you buy the physical copy of a thing, you are granted exactly one license to the private personal enjoyment of the thing. And also you are granted a right of first resale. And that's it. You remember when Xerox's first, I'm not actually that old, but I do remember like there were some teachers in elementary school that were like, "Oh, I can't Xerox this because Xeroxes are illegal copies, and it's violating copyright." Well, eventually we got that we got the copyright exemption. There we go. Found the word. We got the copyright exemption for education, but a lot of teachers still don't know that. So it's becoming muddy, and it's not just because it's muddy that gamers are upset. It's because it feels like they've been sold a thing. And this response from game devs of like, no, it's a multiplayer game, bro. As soon as we shut it down, yeah, of course the whole game goes down. It's a multiplayer game. It's multiplayer in any possible part. No, of course the whole game breaks when you can't connect to the servers. Like, are you kidding, bro? So this is the problem. Is that hiding behind, oh, well, you're only sold a license for the private enjoyment of the game is like that's actually not true, because you, Thor, go and play video games on stream and then monetize that. So I went and rewatched video 2, and when he's like, well, you can't just profit off of someone else's piece of art, I came up with like, well, I mean, art houses, there's an agreement there, but also streaming video games, you can in fact monetize and make money off of other people's art. That door has been opened. And yeah, if you want to come up with a law that says that like, oh no, we're rolling that back. Whoops, did the wrong one. No, we're rolling that back now. That would also be a change. So I want to move on. There's two parts that Lewis Rossmann video links this Thor VOD. And I'm going to pull out 2 clips of that. And we're already at 40 minutes.
That's the biggest issue. So
and I also left it at 1.
Understand the Stop Killing Games initiatives is basically.
So this is, as far as I understand, he like saw in the news that like, oh yeah, the Stop Killing Games initiative is out, and went and read their website and was like, this is bad. And this is his total understanding right now. He hasn't gone and watched any videos. He's not aware of anything. This is the full extent of his understanding.
We don't want single-player games to have DRM that the developers can turn off and thus render the single-player games inactive anymore. This is what they want to change. The way that they're going about it is
See, and I don't. That's not what the website says. Right? Stop Killing Games is literally about live service games that get turned off. We would like to continue playing the game with friends. And he somehow read that like, oh, you want the DRM to unlock.
He's using very vague language that makes it so that even live service games could be caught in this net, which means every multiplayer game gets caught in the net.
Yeah.
And they have to put in caveats such as allowing people to run private servers and so on and so forth after the game dies in order for them to even make it in the first place. Government run initiative. I can't back this, dude.
So that is his understanding at this point. Is like, so you want a way to turn off the DRM, and then you're also like accidentally dragnetting all live service games, all multiplayer games that need to become single player games. So that's where his crazy rant about like, so you need to take the client and the server and you need to smoosh them together in the game, and that doesn't really work. Like, you're right, that wouldn't really work, but also that's not what we want. We want you to publish server.exe, which I still don't agree with Stop Killing Games. I don't think it's the right direction to go in, and I don't think it's somewhere in the like in the broad canon scattershot of like the right direction. But I don't think it goes far enough, and I don't think it's I don't think that I think that you're kidding yourself if you think that you're going to end up with a law that's actually useful.
I can't. It is too goddamn vague. And we'll go pull it up right now just so you can see this. Because there's always going to be someone to be like, wrong! Because they didn't actually read it, and they just read a Twitter post.
He didn't actually read it. He thought he read it with his eyeballs, and he misread it.
Official government petitions have been introduced to prohibit the practice of intentionally rendering commercial video games inoperable when support ends. Currently, petitions for the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia have been launched and will soon be open for signing. This right here, intentionally rendering commercial video games inoperable when support ends. Of course, we render them inoperable when support ends because we turn the servers off.
So, once again, Thor is apparently of the oh, I've been hiding his face. Hello. The Thor man, he has a face. He's always on that side of the video. In fact, he's right there on my screen, but he's over there on your screen. Thor doesn't believe that multiplayer games are worth saving because they're multiplayer, and that makes them ephemeral, and it's not worth saving them because if you don't have the original player base on launch day, it's not the same. I have already debunked this in the prior video, and if I re-debunk it again, this video is going to be the same length. Come on, go. Oh,
They need to be specific that they're talking about single-player games that do not need a server to support them.
And this is how you know. That he has misread it. And now someone in chat is going to link him to the original to the farms, Accursed Farms. I think that's the channel name. Ross's video. And he's going to become more informed. But that is so we're at the back, we're at the very back part of the video. So hopefully this will get the least amount of viewers. I have a personal failing. It's a me problem. It's not a you problem. The hackles go up when I hear someone speaking English wrong. And Ross is one of those people that just inflects English wrong. So I'm not interested in talking to Ross because my fight or flight instinct fires, and find his voice painful. Like, I get an upset stomach listening to it. So we're going to do this, and I'm going to have to go take a Pepto-Bismol. But
the petition text is different.
Oops. Once again, I was watching this to find these timestamps.
Can you link it? See, I'm gonna explain something to the class. All right. I know some of you guys just see me as the substitute teacher sometimes. If you're gonna make a claim, you have to post a link. I don't give a shit about what you say until you post information. God damn it. Share with the class. What is this? Europeans can save gaming?
Here we go.
Oh, God. What is this? What do you mean Europeans can save gaming? Gaming isn't in need of saving.
I've been working on a campaign to stop the destruction of video games. See, most video games work indefinitely, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, the entire live service game industry does not work that way.
Correct.
But
yeah.
more and more are being designed to stop working the second support ends from the publisher.
Not just the publisher, the developers as well. Mm-hmm. It's called a live service game. When we turn the servers off, the game dies.
Have you ever like gone off half-cocked about something? Like you thought you understood something, someone told you something, and you were like, "That's ridiculous! I'm outraged." That's where Thor is right now. But also, once again, I agree. This is not it. This is not how you fix this problem. So his righteous anger is not wrong, and I don't want it to be redirected, because this is not how you fix this.
Because it's all rendered.
There is a way where something like this is a stepping stone to fixing it. But
completely on the server side, and we do that specifically for security reasons, because if it was all rendered client side, then you'd be able to cheat at the game dramatically easier.
We're still on the client
it's a
server
form of
thing.
Planned obsolescence.
No, it's not a form of planned obsolescence. It's called the game no longer being
I mean, it is a form of planned obsolescence. It's the same as me buying a washing machine and them having validated one of their acrylic sprockets for 3 years, because they're going to warranty it for 3 years, and then 3 years and 1 month later of regular use, it snaps. The washer is as cheap as it is because they have minimized their costs down to the point where all that they validated that acrylic sprocket for is 3 years. And that's why they warranty it for 3 years. They went in saying we want a 3-year warranty, and then they validate for 3 years. To validate for 5 years would take longer, would be more expensive. The part would be more expensive. And why wasn't it that way in the 40s? Because our engineering tolerances weren't there. The manufacturing wasn't there in order to be that specific. So they just overbuilt it. And money was worth more then. So now, except for the companies that have been to court where they've lost the court case and it's documented, yes, it was malicious planned obsolescence. They're just building these things for the terms of the warranty, because their other competitors in the space were finding ways to make it cheaper. That's what games are doing. How do we make it cheaper? How do we increase our profit while making the game development part cheaper? Well, we can tie it to a server, and then we can either get it monthly or we can get it in microtransactions, and that makes us money. We can sell it for free, and then in $1 and $4 increments, we'll make billions more dollars than we did selling a $60 boxed game and needing to put in enough content for people to feel like that $60, $70, $80 boxed game was worth it.
Profitable, and we turned it off.
Where publishers are destroying games they've already sold to you.
No, we're turning off servers that are no longer viable for a game that is no longer making money. Not just publishers either, developers as well.
But keeping your money.
So keep in mind here, Thor is not on the side of Ubisoft or game developers. Thor is on the side of multiplayer experiences are supposed to be ephemeral. He's wrong on that. Because history is worth it. The people and the artists who think, oh no, my thing is an ephemeral experience and it's supposed to be enjoyed in the moment, and then like the dandelion, it is scattered to the winds. Those people come up with the good ideas, but also 100 years from now, we will want to be able to explore what people were doing in the early 21st century. And yes, if it means that they build up a weird version of World of Warcraft and they go, this is what they played in the 21st century. Those silly people. Do you see how they cramp their fingers on their what they call keyboards? Their boards of keys. Nowadays, direct neural stimulation is far more enjoyable. But that's not wrong.
And this is,
of course we keep your money, because you bought the experience, you experienced it, and then the game was over, and eventually the community dies, and we turn the servers off.
But I gave you money for a thing, and
it is
I
not
thought
preventable.
I
you
had
can't play World of
the
Warcraft
thing.
as a single-player game.
I've compared this before to studios from a century ago burning their own films after they were done showing them.
That is not the same as World of Warcraft servers going offline
It
after the game
literally
stops
is
making
the
money.
same thing from the preservation standpoint,
and now,
Thor.
most films of that era are gone forever.
Still not the same.
That's very similar to what's happening to
When they turn off the eShop and you can no longer download the things that you bought, that's destruction. And I've just taken turn. Whoops. So yes, even though it's a multiplayer game, keeping it around in a playable form is valid, is good.
video games today.
No, it's not.
It's just a terrible practice for everyone involved. Now, most of my efforts have gone towards challenging the legality of this practice in various countries because it's so consumer hostile. It's not clear if what's going on is even legal.
It's not
No, it is
clear
legal. It's called
if
running a
what is
video game on a
going
server,
on
and then
is
you have
even
access to that server under the
legal.
TOS for the lifetime of that server
You
being
don't
online,
have
and
to-
then when the server goes offline, you no
don't
longer have
have
access to the
to
game because it's rendered entirely server-side.
Emphasize it like that.
That's how live service games work.
That's still ongoing.
That's still
But now we have a new
ongoing.
option, proposing
It's like a Darman video. Ugh.
new law, and for the entire European Union. It took months to get put together and processed, but now we have a European Citizens Initiative devoted to halting the destruction of video games.
This is wild to watch.
You can read it yourself. This would require publishers to leave games they have sold to customers in a working state at the time of shutdown.
How are you going to do that with World of Warcraft? How are you going to do that with any live service game? How are you going to do that with Final Fantasy XIV? You shut down the servers, and then the game still has to be in a working state. It is an MMO. That is a live service video game.
You make
That doesn't make any goddamn sense. You can convert them into a single-player game. Who's going to do that in the
No.
case of the company not having enough income to continue making the video game? Do you think that work just comes out of thin air? What happens when it's an indie developer? Do you think that they're going to be like, imagine Realm of the Mad God, and Realm of the Mad God suddenly goes out of business, and the indie studio isn't able to do this. What are they going to do? Face fines for not converting it into a single-player game? Do you see how insane that take is?
They're
without
not asking for you to
requiring
convert
any
it to a
further
single-player
connection
game.
to them
They're
or
asking you to
affiliated
make
parties for the games to function.
all
You
the things necessary
literally
to
cannot
keep the
do
game
that.
functional public.
How they would do this
even just to the previously paying consumer.
We're going to pose a problem to you and then shit on your desk and then make you clean it up and figure it out. Why don't you just do
like Lewis said, or maybe I pulled that out. That might have been pulled out. The game player doesn't feel like they're shitting on your desk. They feel that when the publisher turns off the crew, which apparently did in fact have single player mechanics. I don't know. I don't play the game. Clearly, they feel like the publisher took a shit on their desk. So they're going to get out their shovel, shunk, and sling that right back over the fence onto the desk which dealt it.
Do that, developer.
This would also apply to free-to-play games that contain microtransactions.
What?
I not in this form, but I agree. I want, when Pokemon Go shuts down, I want all of the infrastructure, even if it's just in a Twitch leak style of like, here's an export from their GitHub. I want to be able to go and play Pokemon Go without having to do the microtransactions and being able to spoof my GPS without having any game masters going, no, you cannot bend. I want to go and see what was in that game. I want to go and see. I want to see what other people do with that game. Because that's been the neat thing about the internet is the amazing amount of remixing that comes out of it. Is just the people who have found how far they can push the Nintendo 64 hardware from reverse engineering Super Mario 64 has been amazing. Why would you want to slow them down? Nintendo... Oh, that's a bad example. Nintendo shouldn't care. Shouldn't care what people are doing to old Nintendo 64 games on Nintendo 64 hardware. Or emulating it. It's a neat hardware design. Just let them go wild.
We want your free-to-play game that contains microtransactions to be playable indefinitely in a single-player setup in case your studio doesn't make enough money to support that free-to-play game with servers.
Because if you purchased a microtransaction as a good, then the game is made unplayable, well, then you just lost your goods.
No, you had control of it over the time that they were on the servers, which is why it's part of the EULA and TOS for those games. You have access to those assets.
See, and here it is. Game dev Thor, who's worked at the biggest of the boys, Blizzard, is fully on board with like, no, you agreed to a EULA, you agreed to a terms of service, and like, no. Users didn't read that. They don't know. And not only do they not know, they don't care what's in there. If what's in there differs from their understanding is right. And for 90% of the cases, there's no difference in those. The player was allowed to do everything that was in their understanding to do. And if they like botted, they're like, yeah, you're right. I was ruining the experience for everyone else or something. Yeah, okay. I get it. But the other 9% that where that didn't line up, where they were like, well, no, your EULA terms are dumb, according to my understanding of how the game works. Like, that's how you create angry customers. I don't know why.
For the time that the game is online and in service, it is a multiplayer server-side video game.
This would not require publishers to give up.
Stop saying publishers, because not all publishers are implicated here. It is not going to be publishers. It's also going to be developers. Individual developers do the exact same practice because it's called a live service video game.
Any of their intellectual property rights? Give up their source code? Though that one would still be nice.
Require publishers to give up their source code? The initiative would not do this? Publishers don't even always have access to the source code.
It wouldn't require endless support.
It wouldn't require endless support? No, it would require a shitload of support at the time of transitioning an entire multiplayer.
He's once again, he's still on this like, oh no, you have to transition a multiplayer thing to be single player instead of just like,
server
here you go, here's all the
game
crap that we use to
into
run
a
the
single
thing.
player
We're done,
video
bye.
game, which means rebalancing the entire experience around single player, rebuilding everything in the entire game. How are you going to do that with Final Fantasy XIV? You're just going to make all the raids soloable? Man, is that really going to give the same experience? This shit makes no goddamn sense.
They can end it any time they want.
He's thinking too hard about it. Right? He's like, you have to rebalance the game in order for the whole game to be soloable because now it's a single player game. No one's asking for that. No one's asking for that. It's like the guy who plays Elden Ring with a Guitar Hero controller. No, you didn't need to make the game. You didn't need to natively support the Guitar Hero controller. I did that. I can do that. That's fine. But people are too concerned with like, well, but I have to provide a good experience. No, if you're done with it, just be done with it. Just like, there you go, it's done now. It was a neat experience when it was done while it was going.
As far as we're concerned, you wouldn't need to host servers.
You're posing this as a benefit. It's going to make the game shit.
They would have to either patch out that requirement or else allow customers to host them privately. Assume any liability for what customers do with their copies of games.
And in this
so this would not.
Yeah, thank you. As Thor keeps on doing, he keeps on having to remind himself it would not require. But because of how poorly put together this is, you should say would not require, and I know that would be word duplication, but you're already putting require, and for most of them, publishers.
Require publishers to assume liability for the customer actions. Except it would, because every single time that somebody would go off and create a private server, and that private server would have problems, do you know who gets tickets for it?
You would.
The parent company that made the original game.
Yep.
You know how I know that? Because we got tens of thousands of tickets at Blizzard for private servers for World of Warcraft.
Yep.
This is the most uneducated take I have ever seen in games.
Yeah.
This is insane.
This point alone, this would not require publishers to assume liability. Like, yeah, you don't have to respond to these tickets. You could just close as nope, lol. But also, a lot of developers would feel a professional responsibility to ensure that a good experience is felt, because an unhappy customer is a customer who doesn't return. But also, this is the kind of clueless consumer who's filing help tickets for a literally end-of-life game that you aren't supporting anymore. They're not the brightest bulbs, and they're also not paying attention. Just close the ticket. Just close the ticket. There's too many people who are just like, I have to make sure that I get by well in life and that I don't piss anybody off. No, there are some people where it's just okay. They're gonna get pissed off. Or you ignore them and you never know that they're pissed off.
Insane to watch.
And finally, nothing about this initiative would have any impact on publisher business practices while the game is being supported.
Of course it would, because they'd have to develop all of these systems in place to transition to the sunset model that you're describing, which is going to take developer time and assets and resources and money to be able to pull this off in the first place.
This is why
it's going to interfere directly with the development of the game.
Relatively
and it's also going to lock out a bunch of indies from being able to enter the industry in the first place in any of the scenarios where they're trying to make a live service game, because they have to think about this if they ever decide to sunset the game or the studio.
Yeah. This is such a disingenuous take. Oh my gosh, indies who are making a live service game would have to think more about their live service game. I mean, yes, but you already had to think more about the game when it was a live service game rather than just a single player game. And especially for the audience that Thor encourages, And that's a good thing because he's the Fred Rogers of the software development, Twitch, YouTube space. The kind of audience that Thor encourages and fosters, like, they're starting out at relatively zero. They have very little programming experience. So they have to learn programming in order to make a video game. And then they have to figure out how to unspaghetti their code bases when their video game gets even moderately large-ish. And then they have to think even more if they want to have an online component. And you're already taking on the burden of making a product that you feel comfortable selling to people. To have a polished enough experience that you don't feel bad when someone comes to you and goes, "This was done?" Right? So this take of like, "Oh my gosh, we building a live service game," which I'm gonna start calling them LSGs. Building a live service game is so easy. Requiring me to release everything that would be necessary to let you run privately the game when I'm done with it, that would be so hard. You've taken an easy project and you've made it unbelievably difficult. No. Building a live service game is already difficult. Building a live service game that when you turn it off, you have to give your consumers, the people who bought your game, the ability to keep on playing that game, is not that much harder. Because what it is actually doing, and maybe this is where my bias is, what it is forcing you to do is to think about what your deployment strategy is. Because you need to keep track of all of the bits that make up your game so that when you shut it down, all of those bits go along with it. And you're right. As in the era before people had access to an easy-ish version control system like Git, when they just didn't use version control, yeah, versioning code was hard, and sometimes you deleted a file, and sometimes things didn't merge correctly. Sometimes the one programmer over on the other side of the room was working on an old version of the code, and you were working on a totally different old version of the code, and when you tried to mesh them together, called integration, it broke. Which is why we all started going with some kind of version control system or VCS, and why we all started doing this crazy idea called continuous integration. You begin to hear my biases, being a DevOps engineer. But also, even though we're so spoiled with the version control system we have now, Palworld was developed without Git. They had a bucket of USB keys. You can figure out how to sunset your game when you have a live service component. You can figure it out. I believe in you. I promise you it's not that hard. You don't need to make your Terraform open source. You don't need to provide the EC2, the AMIs. You just need to think about how you're deploying code.
In other words, publishers can continue doing whatever they want.
No, they don't. You've put them in a chain lock around their neck, dude.
As long as you get to keep your game. It amazes me when some people say that's going too far in favor of the consumer.
It's not going too far in favor of the consumer. You're hamstringing games and making them shit for the consumer. under the guise of helping everyone involved.
So to be fair, that's probably not most...
Unfortunately, this argument becomes skill issues. Like, I hate to skill issues Thor because he's been in the industry longer than me, but also, like, skill issues, my dude. You may not know how to do it, but I promise you, you talk to one DevOps person. You don't hire a DevOps person on full time. You bring on one full stack dev. You bring in one dev who doesn't live entirely in the IDE. This is definitely my bias. You bring in one dev that doesn't live in the IDE and just understands the system that's underneath the video game. That there are files that need to go in places. And that there's a structure, and that there's like a line endings thing, and that like build systems exist. And I promise you, it is not hard to figure out how to sunset a game by just, here are all of the bits that we use to run the game. We're not going to tell you how they all, we don't need to tell you how they all come together. That would be crazy, but that's all of the bits that were the game. Because we're done with it now.
Europeans. The idea here
Jesus
is we're
Christ.
just trying to stop games from being destroyed. That's it.
No games are being destroyed here. These are live service games.
So we're taking as narrow
Thor.
an approach as possible.
Live
that
service
still
games
solves the
are
problem.
games.
The narrowest approach as possible. Let's destroy all live service
Now,
games.
this is
be
correct.
completely
This is not the
disingenuous about
narrowest
the reasoning
approach
behind it,
possible.
and say that we're saving games. That's really narrow, right? Yeah, very good.
This is not the
You get enough
narrowest approach
signatures,
possible.
and there's
Lewis
no support
actually
from the
proposed
European
several
Union
more
to consider it
narrower
as new
first steps
law.
that
I hope
you
it gets
could
shut
take.
down.
Now, if you're on board with this, you don't have to keep watching. You can go sign it right now.
No, I'm good.
But wait, before you do, you have one chance to do this right.
Cool FOMO,
It's
dude.
not hard, but if you make a mistake, your signature is invalidated and you don't get another chance. We've made guides at stopkillinggames.com on how to do this, just in case.
No.
It's not a guarantee, but I think if we get the signatures, this passes.
No.
Why do I say that? Well, it's a few factors. Politicians like easy win.
My idea is shit.
Once again, Thor, you've never met me before, but you and I, soulmates on this one slide. Absolutely.
But it's easy to digest, so politicians are going to push it forward. I am very smart.
And this doesn't require them to do much at all. And unless it involves gambling or protecting children, politicians generally don't care about video games.
Politicians don't care about the subject matter, so they just want the easy win,
Yeah.
and it's going to let us
They
push
don't
it
care
through,
about this.
regardless
So
of
we'll
if
get
it's
it
good or not.
introduced to
Man,
the
this
floor?
is not the
I don't
W he
know.
thinks it is.
So this isn't a big
Remember all the things that I said this was about that's really dangerous? He's listing them for you.
consequence to them or most of their constituencies. EU law is already unclear on a lot of this practice.
So we're fixing
anyway.
that.
Because there's no
And
precedent.
We would be making it easy for them
The-
to...
Maybe this isn't as big of a cultural disconnect as I thought, but also in the United States we're all about precedent, and in the EU you're all about the law, and it might just be that by law you mean the precedent that it sets, but like
settle it.
No,
It
you
falls in
wouldn't.
line with other consumer practices.
If this goes through, not only is it going to be a shit show, it's going to be hell to repeal. God, this is bad.
once again, does the EU ever repeal things? No, we're sorry, farmers. You can't. Nitrogen is a global warming gas, so you can't use it to grow the crops that we all use to eat. I never went here because I didn't do it. But there's a thing on this page that's like stuck there. I can't get rid of it by going or doing anything. The bugger does this do? This I don't have the option to opt out. I literally don't have the option to opt out of your cookies. I thought that was part of the cookie bill. Was cookie bill GDPR, or was GDPR just the right to be forgotten? How is this serving people? Having every single fucking website on the whole fucking internet do this. Oh, we only use this strictly you have to click this button in order to get this banner to go away. No, literally every other part of your website moves and scrolls so that I can go and see the thing, except for this government fucking mandated banner. How do you think this Stop Killing Games initiative is going to become any better than this fucking banner? Like I said, on this one slide, Thor and I are eye to eye.
You know how when you buy something, you're generally allowed to keep it? And finally, this is a diversion from really serious topics that politicians would prefer not to deal with.
So you're social engineering politicians that don't know anything about the subject matter to try and push through an initiative about an industry you clearly don't understand to stop killing video games in a way that would kill all live service games. Am I getting that right?
It wouldn't kill all live service games.
I feel like I'm getting that right.
This would let them stay busy and avoid hard stuff. In fact, I would bet if we can clear the signature threshold,
I mean,
this passes into law and we solve.
The good version of this would not kill live service games. If an engineer reads this as an RFC, which, by the way, there's no text on here to read as an RFC. There's just this. And there's the FAQ, which does not expand upon any of the things that I have seen many people expanding upon in comments all over the internet, and people saying that Ross has said, "Oh no, they wouldn't." I think I saw a comment. I think there was even another clip from in another VOD where Ross had made a comment and Thor read the comment about like, what would you do for WoW? Well, WoW wouldn't get caught up in this because you pay monthly for that. And it's not being sold as a single player game, except this is like, well, I mean, but you would the massively multiplayer games something would happen when you shut it off. I get ? Hello. There was a part that I clipped out from the 2 bits that I'm taking in here, and once again we're at an hour 22. Where Thor's like, hey, link me the actual EU petition text. Because this is not EU petition text. Because like all that I know that this is doing as a non-EUian, which, you know, fair. If you're gonna go and do your own thing in your own little place, that's fine. But also, European Citizens Initiative. No, this isn't it. It's in the FAQ where the how is this campaign going to, well, I mean, yeah, so like the EU exists in the world, and whenever any sufficiently large enough country just decides to make a thing, then the way that companies typically end up implementing it is it's just a worldwide thing, and then everyone has to fucking deal with their fucking cookie banners or with the GDPR right to be forgotten bullshit. As an American, I think that there's a better, more American way to deal with the fact that a company has your data and is harvesting it, and when you close your account, they don't delete your data, and that you didn't get your data out or whatever. But because now Europe has moved on it, no one in the US is going to do anything to like, let's get a more USian version of this, where we're still gonna fuck it up because it's all gonna be lobbyists and whatever. But like this oh well, we can save games because we're the EU and we have everything that the EU government has ever done has always worked out well for us and has never turned out to be useless.
The problem 90% or more.
Jesus.
I say 90% because this would only
and this right here, this is exactly the same
hey,
point.
You bros. Don't.
So if a game was released only in China...
This is not a parody. No, it is not a parody.
Japan, yeah, this wouldn't save those. But most video games are sold globally, and the EU is part of that.
So we're well into the back of the video. I can have the spiciest takes. I thought when the Digital Markets Act passed, I thought that Apple was going to go, all right, all of our EU employees are fired. We're just going to close up shop. We no longer do business in the EU. Bye. But they didn't. They pussied out, and now like, oh, okay, we're gonna disable we're gonna disable what is it, progressive web apps, and then people got mad. Okay, fine, we're gonna re-enable progressive web apps, but we're still maybe not going to allow people to put their own browser engines on iOS. Okay, I mean the law maybe said that, and also the law said or. So we only have to implement one of the payment buttons or one of the payment options, and the link to the external thing with no tracking documents, which wasn't in the y'all. The laws that end up getting written, even when they're hundreds of thousands of pages, you still end up with corporate actors pulling these stunts. It doesn't fix things.
Once it's a requirement that companies have to let you keep the games they sold to you in a major market like that,
God.
I think it's...
So, where I expected that Apple would just be like, all right, fine. You're gonna require the Type-C on the iPhone? Fine, no more iPhones. You're gonna require what on iOS? No, we're just no more iOS. Okay, goodbye. I fully expect a lot. You thought that Sony putting 173 or 137 countries on the you're not allowed to buy games that have even the smallest amount of multiplayer because we're going to force you to link your PSN account, and these countries don't have PSN. Watch when there's a lot fewer games that are not available for purchase in the EU bloc. If this happens.
Spreads, whether it's the law elsewhere or not. Now, unfortunately, what I would not bet on...
Okay, I'm going to be 100% real with you. I don't need to see a damn other word. He's clearly displayed all of the take on this. This would absolutely be targeting live service games.
Yes.
And it's specifically trying to get pushed through.
We finally got it through. We finally got it through in his head. No, they are in fact actually targeting live service games. This isn't DRM for single player games that they want stripped out when you shut down. No. They want to be able to keep on playing live service games after you shut down the live service by you making the service available for them to run privately. Hello.
In a disingenuous manner because they're targeting politicians that know nothing about the field. This is shit. It's shit. Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to.
That is what awful. He's been doing. That's where these two videos came from. That is horrible goddamn direction.
100%. That's not stop killing games. That's start killing games is what that shit stands for. No, that's awful, dude. No. You're going to kill the entire live service industry by doing that. Under the guise of player ownership. By trying to make it into a free win, and it's not. That's awful, dude. No. Eat my entire ass.
There we go. That was the whole end of the clip. I was going until we got eat my entire ass. So, that's the part 2. I haven't done a part 1 and a part 2 of these kind of things since Crowder went all flippy outy about the daily... What's the Ben Shapiro one? The Daily Caller? The Daily Wire? I don't know. One of them. Since Crowder went and flipped his shit about like, oh my gosh, have you been seeing these contracts that streamers get signed? It's like, yes, I've been following Twitch streamers for the last 7 years. Yes, that's the contract. And now, oh, it was delicious. Whatever. All right. And that's what they call jazz.